Rain pattered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Blackwell penthouse, turning the Manhattan skyline into a blur of gray and muted lights. Sophia Blackwell stared out at the dismal weather, tapping her manicured nails against the crystal tumbler in her hand. 3 days back in New York after 4 years studying abroad, and she was already bored to tears. "Is there anything else you need, Miss Sophia?" Elena asked, her voice soft but clear as she finished arranging fresh flowers on the marble countertop. Sophia turned from the window with a sigh. "No, thank you, Elena. Actually, wait, when is Dad getting home?" Mr. Blackwell called to say he'll be delayed until evening. A meeting with investors from Singapore. Elena wiped her hands on her apron, her movements efficient after 15 years of service to the Blackwell family. Sophia nodded, unsurprised. Her father, Richard Blackwell, tech visionary and billionaire many times over, was always caught in meetings with investors or emergency board calls. Even her return from London hadn't disrupted his schedule. The welcome home dinner had been postponed twice already. "Great," Sophia muttered. "Another thrilling night alone in paradise." She wandered from the living room into the grand foyer, her footsteps echoing off the marble floor. The penthouse was too big, too empty, too perfect. Like a museum where she happened to sleep. After the bustling energy of her London flat, shared with 3 other students who became her closest friends, the silence here felt oppressive. A movement near the service entrance caught her eye. A young man sat on the bench by the coat closet, head bent over a book. Dark hair fell across his forehead as he turned a page, completely absorbed in whatever he was reading. Sophia paused, trying to place him. He seemed vaguely familiar, but she couldn't quite remember. Elena emerged from the kitchen and approached the young man. "Miguel, I'll be done in about 30 minutes. Do you want to wait in the staff room?" The young man, Miguel, looked up and smiled at Elena. The resemblance was immediate and striking. "It's fine. Mama, I'm at a good part anyway." He held up his book, something about music theory Sophia suddenly remembered. Miguel was Elena's son. She'd seen him occasionally over the years when he came to pick up his mother, but they'd never actually spoken. He'd been a skinny teenager the last time she'd really noticed him. But the person sitting on the bench was definitely a man now, probably around her age or a bit older, with his mother's warm brown eyes and a quiet confidence in the way he held himself. Feeling restless and curious, Sophia approached them. Elena immediately straightened. "Miss Sophia, this is my son, Miguel. He's waiting for me to finish my shift." Miguel stood politely, his book tucked under one arm. "Nice to see you again, Miss Blackwell. Please, it's just Sophia." She waved away the formality, studying him with newfound interest. "You look different. Last time I saw you, you were 16 and gangly," Miguel supplied with a small self-deprecating smile. "That was probably right before I left for college." "College?" Sophia couldn't hide her surprise. She'd never really thought about Elena's life outside the penthouse, let alone considered that her son might be educated. A flicker of something. Amusement. Irritation crossed Miguel's face. "Yes, college. I graduated 2 years ago." Elena beamed with unmistakable pride. "My Miguel is very smart." Mama, he interrupted gently. "I'm sure Miss Sophia doesn't want to hear about that." An awkward silence fell. Sophia felt a pang of shame at her obvious surprise. Of course Elena's son would go to college. Why wouldn't he? The realization of how little she knew about the woman who had worked in her home for 15 years was uncomfortable. "Actually," Sophia said, grasping for a way to extend the conversation, "I'd love to hear. What did you study?" Before Miguel could answer, Sophia noticed him glancing past her toward the living room, where the magnificent Steinway grand piano sat by the windows, her mother's pride and joy before she passed away 6 years ago. The piano had remained largely untouched since then. Sophia had taken lessons for years but had never developed more than basic competence. "Do you play?" she asked, nodding toward the piano. Miguel hesitated. "A little." Elena made a sound that might have been a laugh quickly disguised as a cough. "Really?" Sophia raised an eyebrow at Elena's reaction. "Well, we should put on a little show then. I'm dying for some entertainment and my friends are coming over later for drinks. You could play something for us. Just for fun." The idea formed as she spoke. Having live music would be a novelty for her friends, who were always looking for new experiences to post on social media. Miguel exchanged a look with his mother that Sophia couldn't quite interpret. "I don't think..." he began. Oh, go ahead, mijo, Elena interrupted with a smile. Miss Sophia is asking nicely. One song won't hurt. Sophia clapped her hands together. Perfect. Come on, I'll show you. She led the way to the living room, suddenly energized. This rainy afternoon had just gotten more interesting. Behind her, she heard Miguel whisper something to his mother in Spanish, and Elena's soft laugh in response. The Steinway gleamed under the recessed lighting, its polished ebony surface reflecting the room like dark water. Sophia ran her fingers across the fallboard. It's probably out of tune. Nobody's played it in ages, she said. Miguel approached the instrument with unexpected reverence, his earlier hesitation transformed into quiet focus. May I? He asked, gesturing to the fallboard. Sophia nodded, stepping back to give him space. He lifted the fallboard carefully and stared at the keys for a long moment. Then almost tentatively he pressed one key, a middle C that rang clear and true through the room. Not out of tune at all, he said, sounding impressed. Your family must have it maintained regularly. Dad has someone come twice a year. Mom was serious about her piano. Miguel nodded as though this made perfect sense to him. He sat down on the bench, adjusting its height with the familiarity of someone who had done so countless times before. Sophia leaned against the wall, curious about what simple tune he might attempt. Maybe Chopsticks or Heart and Soul? Something basic that would give them all a laugh. He positioned his hands over the keys, took a deep breath, and began to play. The first notes of Claude Debussy's Clair de Lune filled the room. So pure and delicate they seemed to hang in the air like crystals catching light. Sophia straightened, her casual smirk fading into astonishment as Miguel's fingers moved across the keyboard with fluid precision. This was no amateur fumbling through a beginner's piece. This was artistry. The gentle opening developed into cascading arpeggios that Miguel executed with effortless grace. Each phrase breathed with emotion, wistful and dreamy, then building to a passionate crescendo before returning to the quiet reflection of the opening theme. Sophia found herself holding her breath. She glanced at Elena, who stood in the doorway watching her son with a serene smile, clearly unsurprised by his talent. From another doorway, Sophia noticed the household chef and one of the maids had paused their work, drawn by the music. As the final notes faded into silence, Sophia realized her eyes had filled with tears. The piece had always been her mother's favorite. Miguel sat motionless for a moment, then gently closed the fallboard and stood up. That was... Sophia struggled to find words adequate to what she'd just witnessed. You don't play a little, that was incredible. A flush crept up Miguel's neck. Thank you. It's a beautiful instrument. Where did you learn to play like that? Sophia asked, still trying to reconcile the extraordinary performance with the young man she'd dismissed as just the housekeeper's son minutes earlier. Before Miguel could answer, Elena stepped forward with quiet pride. Miguel attended Juilliard on a full scholarship. Oh, mama, Miguel interrupted gently again. It's not a big deal. But to Sophia it was a very big deal. Juilliard was one of the most prestigious performing arts conservatories in the world. She knew people who would give anything for a spot there, let alone a full scholarship. Why didn't you ever tell us, Elena? Sophia asked, a hint of accusation in her voice. Elena's smile remained gentle, but her eyes held a quiet dignity. You never asked, Miss Sophia. The simple truth of those words hit Sophia like a physical blow. Of course they had never asked. Elena had worked for their family for 15 years, and Sophia realized with shame that she knew almost nothing about her life. Nothing about her brilliant son who played piano like he was born for it. I should have asked, Sophia said quietly. She looked at Miguel with new eyes, not as the housekeeper's son, but as a person in his own right. A talented musician who had achieved something remarkable through his own merit. The sound of Sophia's phone buzzing broke the moment. Her friends were downstairs wanting to be led up to the penthouse. The afternoon would continue as planned, but Sophia knew something had fundamentally shifted. In the way she saw Miguel, Elena, and perhaps herself. My friends are here, she said, feeling strangely reluctant to end this unexpected moment of connection. Would you consider playing something for us? I'll pay you, of course, Miguel shook his head. Thank you, but I should go. My mother's shift is almost over. Another time, perhaps, Sophia said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. As Miguel and Elena moved toward the service entrance, Sophia found herself wondering what other talents, what other entire lives, had been moving through her world unseen all this time, simply because she'd never bothered to look. The elevator chimed as it reached the penthouse. Sophia's friends poured into the foyer in a wave of designer perfumes and animated chatter, their voices echoing off the marble floors. They shed their rain-dampened coats and immediately gravitated toward the bar cart in the living room. God, I needed this, sighed Vanessa, Sophia's oldest friend, as she poured herself a generous gin and tonic. The rain is absolutely ruining my new boots. Sophia nodded absently, her mind still on Miguel's performance. She kept glancing toward the service entrance, but he and Elena had already left. Hello? Earth to Sophia? Vanessa waved her hand in front of Sophia's face. You look like you've seen a ghost. Sorry, Sophia said, shaking her head. Something weird happened before you got here. Ooh, do tell, said Drew, sprawling onto the white leather sofa with his drink. We could use some excitement. This weather is depressing. Sophia opened her mouth to explain about Miguel and his unexpected talent, but she hesitated. Something about the experience felt almost private, and she wasn't sure she wanted to share it just yet, especially given how dismissive she'd been initially. Nothing major, she said instead. Just thinking about what to do this weekend. The city feels different after being away so long. Her friends launched into suggestions for exclusive restaurants and clubs, but Sophia found herself tuning out again. She walked to the piano and lifted the fallboard, staring at the keys that had come alive under Miguel's touch. She pressed middle C, the same note he had, but it sounded flat and ordinary when she played it. Since when do you care about the piano? Asked Drew, noticing her distraction. I was thinking of taking lessons again, Sophia said, surprising herself with the idea. I quit too easily when I was younger. Boring, Vanessa declared, scrolling through her phone. Oh, speaking of not boring, guess who's performing at your dad's charity gala next month? Sophia turned from the piano. No idea. Dad hasn't told me anything about it. That mysterious pianist everyone's obsessed with, M.A. Reyes, Vanessa said, holding up her phone to show a sleek digital invitation. My parents got the official invite this morning. It's going to be the event of the season. Sophia frowned. Who's M.A. Reyes? Her friend stared at her in disbelief. Seriously? Even I know who he is, said Drew, who normally couldn't care less about classical music. He's like this brilliant young pianist who came out of nowhere. Super Private rarely gives interviews. Everyone's talking about him. He's gorgeous too, added Vanessa, pulling up a photo, though he always wears these artistic black and white masks for performances. Very mysterious. Sophia glanced at the photo on Vanessa's phone, a striking figure seated at a grand piano, face half concealed by an elegant mask, hands suspended over the keys in a moment of artistic intensity. Something about those hands seemed familiar. The evening continued, but Sophia remained distracted. When her friends finally left around midnight, she found herself searching online for videos of M.A. Reyes. She clicked on one from a performance at Carnegie Hall 6 months ago. The stage lights dimmed as a slender figure in a perfectly tailored black suit walked to the center of the stage. His face was partially obscured by a mask, but his confident stride and the way he acknowledged the audience's applause with a slight bow struck a chord of recognition in Sophia. When he sat at the piano and began to play Chopin's Ballade No. 1, Sophia's suspicions crystallized into certainty. She'd seen those hands, that posture, that particular way of leaning into emotional passages just hours ago in her own living room. M.A. Reyes was Miguel. Sophia sat back, stunned. The son of her family's housekeeper wasn't just a talented pianist. He was a rising star in the classical music world, famous enough to headline her father's prestigious charity gala, and she had asked him to play something for fun, like he was a trained monkey. Sophia groaned and buried her face in a pillow. No wonder Elena had that knowing smile when she encouraged her son to play. The memory of her condescending attitude made Sophia cringe. The sound of the front door opening roused her from her embarrassment. Her father's voice carried from the foyer as he instructed his security detail about tomorrow's schedule. Dad? Sophia called, getting up to greet him. Richard Blackwell looked tired but smiled warmly when he saw his daughter. At 58, he was still handsome and imposing, with salt and pepper hair and the intense focus that had helped build his tech empire. There's my girl, he said, giving her a quick hug. Sorry about dinner. The Singapore deal is more complicated than we anticipated. It's fine, Sophia said, used to his absences. Listen, I found out something interesting today. Her father loosened his tie as he poured himself a scotch. What's that? Did you know that Elena's son is M.A. Reyes, the pianist performing at your gala? Richard paused with his glass halfway to his lips. Miguel is M.A. Reyes? Are you certain? Positive, Sophia said. He was here earlier waiting for Elena, and I asked him to play the piano. Dad, he's incredible. I looked up videos afterward, and it's definitely him. To Sophia's surprise, her father's tired expression transformed into one of genuine excitement. Well, I'll be damned, he said with a low whistle. I've been trying to get a meeting with M.A. Reyes for months to discuss my arts foundation. His agent is notoriously protective of his privacy. He shook his head, laughing softly, and he's been right under our roof all this time. Sophia felt a twinge of discomfort at her father's words. Under our roof. Like Miguel was somehow their property because his mother worked for them. He's really talented, Dad, like, genuinely amazing. Richard nodded thoughtfully. I know. I heard him play at Lincoln Center last year. That's why I wanted him for the gala, and for our foundation. Young artists like him are exactly who we should be supporting. He took a sip of his scotch. I had no idea he was Elena's son, though. She never mentioned it. That's because we never asked, Sophia said quietly. Her father looked at her sharply, then his expression softened. You're right. We should have. He checked his watch. It's late, but I'm going to speak with Elena first thing tomorrow. The next morning, Sophia woke earlier than usual. She wanted to be present when her father spoke with Elena. She found them both in the kitchen, Elena preparing breakfast while her father sat at the counter with a cup of coffee and a stack of documents. Good morning, Sophia said, pouring herself a coffee. Perfect timing, her father said. Elena and I were just discussing Miguel, or should I say M.A. Reyes. Elena's expression was a mixture of pride and amusement. I wondered when you would make the connection, Mr. Blackwell. Why didn't you ever mention that your son is a world-class pianist? Richard asked. That he's the same M.A. Reyes who's performing at my gala? Elena wiped her hands on a kitchen towel, her movements unhurried. At first it was because Miguel wanted to establish himself on his own merit, not through connections. He uses a stage name for privacy. She smiled slightly. Later, I suppose it became a small private joke. How long before anyone noticed? There was no bitterness in her voice, only a quiet dignity that made Sophia feel even more ashamed of her blindness. Well, I'd like to speak with him, Richard said. Not just about the gala, but about my foundation. We provide grants to exceptional young artists. I'll tell him, Elena promised. But he's very busy these days. He's preparing for a European tour after your gala. A European tour, Sophia echoed, the reality of Miguel's success sinking in further. Just then, the elevator chimed. Elena glanced at her watch. That will be him now. He's joining me for breakfast before my shift officially begins. Moments later, Miguel appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking startled to find both Sophia and her father there. Good morning, he said cautiously. Richard stood and extended his hand. Miguel, or should I call you Mr. Reyes? I believe we have a lot to talk about. Miguel shook Richard's hand, his expression guarded. Miguel is fine, sir. I have to say I'm impressed, Richard continued. I've attended 3 of your performances in the past year. Your interpretation of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 with the Philharmonic was extraordinary. Miguel's surprise was evident. You were there? Front row, Richard confirmed. I had no idea you were Elena's son. You're very talented. Thank you, Miguel said, his eyes flicking briefly to Sophia. She felt herself blushing under his gaze, remembering how condescendingly she had invited him to play for fun. I'm sorry about yesterday, she blurted out. I didn't know who you were. A small, wry smile touched Miguel's lips. Most people don't, that's the point of the stage name. Don't worry about it. Richard looked between them with interest. Sophia tells me you played for her yesterday? Just one piece, Miguel said. Your piano is exceptional, by the way. It was my late wife's, Richard said softly. She would have loved to hear you play it. An understanding passed between the two men, and Sophia realized there were depths to her father she rarely glimpsed. His genuine appreciation for music, his memories of her mother, his respect for Miguel's talent. I hope we'll hear more from you before the gala, Richard continued. And I'd like to discuss some opportunities with my arts foundation. We're always looking for artists to mentor promising students from underserved communities. For the first time, genuine interest sparked in Miguel's eyes. I'd like that, sir. As they all sat down to breakfast, something Sophia couldn't remember ever doing with her father and a member of their household staff, she watched Miguel with new eyes. Not as the housekeeper's son, not as a famous pianist, but as a person whose life and talents had been flourishing unnoticed right alongside her own privileged existence. The revelation wasn't just about Miguel's hidden identity as M.A. Reyes. It was about how much Sophia had been missing by not really seeing the people around her. 3 days had passed since the revelation of Miguel's identity, and Sophia couldn't stop thinking about it. She found herself looking up more of his performances online, watching with new appreciation as his masked figure commanded stages around the world. The contrast between the quiet, young man who waited for his mother and the confident artist who moved audiences to tears was fascinating. The morning sun streamed through the penthouse windows as Sophia sipped her coffee, scrolling through an article about Miguel's, or rather, M.A. Reyes's rise to fame. According to the piece, he had burst onto the classical scene 2 years ago after winning a prestigious international competition, though he'd been playing smaller venues since his Juilliard days. Critics praised his emotional depth and technical brilliance. One reviewer claimed he played with his soul rather than just his fingers. Reading about yourself is generally disappointing, a voice said from behind her. Sophia jumped, nearly spilling her coffee. Miguel stood in the kitchen doorway, a messenger bag slung across his chest. Sorry, he said. I didn't mean to startle you. It's fine, Sophia said, feeling oddly caught out. I was just researching. A hint of amusement crossed Miguel's face. Find anything interesting? Just that you're apparently the second coming of Chopin. She set down her phone. Why didn't you tell me who you were when I asked you to play? Miguel leaned against the doorframe. Would it have mattered? The question caught Sophia off guard. Of course it would. That's exactly why I didn't say anything. His tone wasn't accusatory, just matter of fact. When people find out who I am, they treat me differently. I'm either M.A. Reyes, the performer they want something from, or I'm just the housekeeper's son they can ignore. Rarely anything in between. Sophia felt her cheeks warm. I deserve that. To her surprise, Miguel shook his head. It wasn't a criticism, just an observation. Besides, your reaction when I played, that was real. You didn't know who I was supposed to be, so you just heard the music. A small smile. That's rare for me these days. Before Sophia could respond, her father walked in, already dressed in a tailored suit despite the early hour. Miguel. Excellent timing, Richard said, pouring himself a coffee. I wanted to catch you before your mother's shift. I've been thinking about the gala. Miguel straightened slightly. Yes, sir. I know you're already our featured performer, but I'd like to propose something additional. Richard's eyes lit with enthusiasm. What would you think about giving a short master class before the main event? We'll have several young scholarship recipients attending, and an opportunity to learn from you would be invaluable. Miguel looked surprised but pleased. I'd be happy to, Mr. Blackwell. That's actually more in line with what I hope to do long term. Which is? Richard asked. Teaching, Miguel said simply. Performing is wonderful, but I want to build something that lasts. A program that gives kids from backgrounds like mine access to music education. Richard nodded thoughtfully. We should discuss this further. The foundation has resources that could help with an initiative like that. Sophia watched the exchange with interest. Her father rarely showed this much personal investment in the foundation's work, usually leaving the details to his staff while he handled the big-picture financials. His genuine enthusiasm was refreshing. I have meetings all day, Richard continued, checking his watch. But perhaps we could discuss this over dinner? Sophia, you'll join us? Definitely, she said, perhaps too quickly. I appreciate the invitation, Miguel said, but I have a rehearsal tonight with the symphony. Tomorrow, then, Richard persisted. I'll have my assistant clear my schedule. After her father left for work, Sophia found herself alone with Miguel again. An awkward silence stretched between them. Your father is very determined, Miguel finally said. Sophia laughed. That's putting it mildly. When he decides something is worth his attention, he goes all in. She hesitated. The dinner invitation is genuine, though. It's not just about business, isn't it? Miguel raised an eyebrow. Well, partly, she admitted. But he really was moved by your playing. My mom was the music lover in the family, and after she died, he threw himself into supporting the arts in her memory. Something in Miguel's expression softened. I didn't know that. Not many people do. Dad's public image is all tech titan and business genius. The sentimental side stays private. Sophia traced the rim of her coffee mug. Anyway, you should come to dinner. If nothing else, the food will be amazing. Miguel smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. I'll check my schedule. He turned to leave, then paused. By the way, do you still want piano lessons? Sophia blinked in surprise. How did you— Your friends are loud, he explained. I overheard you the other night before I left with my mother. Oh. Sophia felt embarrassed, wondering what else he might have heard. I don't think I have the talent for it. Talent is overrated, Miguel said. Persistence matters more. With that, he left, the conversation lingering in the air behind him. The Blackwell Foundation Charity Gala was the most prestigious event of the fall social season. Held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, it brought together New York's elite to raise millions for arts education in underserved communities. This year's event was generating even more buzz than usual due to M.A. Reyes's scheduled performance. 2 weeks after the breakfast conversation, Sophia stood in her bedroom surrounded by designer gowns. The gala was that evening, and she still hadn't decided what to wear. The blue one, Vanessa said decisively, lounging on Sophia's bed. It makes your eyes pop. Sophia held up the midnight blue gown, studying its crystal-embellished bodice. Maybe, I don't know. What's with the indecision? You usually know exactly what you want to wear. Vanessa sat up. Wait, is there someone you're trying to impress? Please tell me you finally met someone interesting. No, Sophia said too quickly. I just want to look appropriate. Dad's making me co-host this year. Vanessa didn't look convinced, but she let it drop. Speaking of your dad, I heard a rumor he's trying to sign M.A. Reyes to some exclusive arrangement with your foundation. It's not exclusive, Sophia corrected without thinking. It's a partnership for a music education program. Vanessa's eyes widened. So it's true. How do you know? Dad said Richard's been weirdly secretive about it. Sophia mentally kicked herself. After the breakfast revelation, her father had asked the family to keep Miguel's identity private until he was ready to reveal it himself. Just something Dad mentioned, she said vaguely. Nothing definite. Well, everyone's dying to meet the mysterious M.A. Reyes, Vanessa continued. Apparently he's giving a master class before the main performance. That's new. Dad's idea, Sophia said, returning to the gowns. He wants to emphasize the education aspect of the foundation. The conversation shifted to other topics, but Sophia's mind kept drifting back to Miguel. Since their brief exchange in the kitchen, she'd only seen him once, during a formal meeting with her father about the gala arrangements. He'd been polite but reserved, nothing like the candid young man who had told her talent is overrated. Later that evening, Sophia stood at the entrance of the museum's grand hall, greeting guests alongside her father. She had chosen the blue dress after all, though her decision had nothing to do with impressing anyone, she assured herself. The space had been transformed into a glittering wonderland, with crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across the marble floors. A grand piano stood on a raised platform at one end of the hall, spotlit and waiting. Nervous? Her father asked between greetings. Why would I be nervous? Richard gave her a knowing look. No reason. He nodded toward an approaching couple. Here come the Prestons. Game face on. The next hour passed in a blur of air kisses and small talk. Sophia played her part perfectly. The accomplished daughter of Richard Blackwell. Gracious and charming, but she kept finding herself glancing toward the doors. Finally, a stir near the entrance caught her attention. Miguel entered the hall, but not as she had ever seen him before. Gone was any trace of the young man who waited quietly for his mother after work. He wore an impeccably tailored black suit, his posture exuding quiet confidence as he moved through the crowd. Most striking was the artful black mask covering the upper half of his face, transforming him fully into his public persona, M.A. Reyes, mysterious virtuoso. Several people immediately flocked to him, but he navigated the attention with practiced grace, neither encouraging nor dismissing it. Sophia felt an unexpected flutter in her chest as she watched him. Her father excused himself from their current conversation and made his way to Miguel, greeting him with a warm handshake that raised several eyebrows among the onlookers. Richard led him back to where Sophia stood. "I believe you know my daughter, Sophia," Richard said, his eyes twinkling with their shared secret. "Miss Blackwell," Miguel said formally, taking her offered hand. Behind the mask, his eyes held a hint of amusement. "A pleasure to see you again." "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Reyes," she replied, playing along. "I'm looking forward to your performance." A small group had gathered around them, watching the exchange with interest. "Is it true you're giving a master class tonight?" asked a board member's wife. "What a treat for the scholarship students." "Mr. Blackwell's idea," Miguel said. "And a good one. The Foundation's work aligns closely with my own interests." "Sophia," Richard said, "why don't you show Mr. Reyes to the private reception room? He should meet the students before the class begins." She nodded, recognizing her father's strategic move to give them a moment away from the crowd. As they walked, Sophia was acutely aware of the glances following them. "You're causing quite a stir," she murmured. "Not my intention," Miguel replied quietly. "How are you holding up?" "Your father said this is your first time co-hosting." "I'm fine," she said, "though I didn't expect to be this involved. Dad usually keeps the Foundation separate from family obligations. Is that what tonight is to you? An obligation?" Sophia stopped walking and turned to face him. "No, not anymore." She hesitated. "I've been thinking about what you said, about persistence being more important than talent. I think I've been using lack of talent as an excuse in a lot of areas." Something shifted in Miguel's expression behind the mask. "Including?" "Understanding the world outside my bubble," she admitted. "Getting involved in work that matters. Actually trying at things that don't come easily." "Like piano?" he asked with a small smile. "Like piano," she agreed. "Among other things." They had reached the private reception room where a dozen eager young musicians waited. As Sophia opened the door, the students' faces lit up at the sight of the famous pianist. "I should go," Sophia said. "They're waiting for you." Miguel nodded, but before entering, he leaned closer to her. "For what it's worth," he said softly, "I think you underestimate yourself." As Sophia walked back to the main hall, she realized that Miguel had seen past her polished exterior to something she herself was only beginning to recognize. The person she wanted to become, rather than the person she had been. The masterclass before the gala performance was unlike anything Sophia had ever witnessed. She stood at the back of the small recital hall, watching as Miguel, still in his mask as M.A. Reyes, worked with the young scholarship students. Gone was any trace of the reserved young man who waited for his mother after work. In his place stood a confident, passionate teacher who connected instantly with each student. "Music isn't just about playing the right notes," Miguel told a nervous 12-year-old boy at the piano. "It's about finding your voice through the composer's work. Let me show you." He sat beside the boy and played a passage from Mozart, first technically perfect but emotionally flat, then again with subtle changes in tempo and dynamics that transformed the piece into something alive and breathing. "Hear the difference?" Miguel asked. The boy nodded, wide-eyed. "You didn't change the notes." "I changed the intention," Miguel explained. "Try again, but this time think about what the music is saying to you." The boy played the passage again, and while it wasn't perfect, there was a newfound expressiveness that hadn't been there before. The small audience of parents and Foundation members broke into spontaneous applause. Sophia found herself moved nearly to tears, not just by the music but by Miguel's natural gift for teaching. She'd attended many Foundation events over the years, always playing the role of the billionaire's daughter with practiced charm. But this was the first time she truly understood what her father's foundation could accomplish. As the master class ended, Richard approached the front of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly why the Blackwell Foundation exists, to nurture talent and passion regardless of background." He placed a hand on Miguel's shoulder. "Mr. Reyes understands this mission personally. His generosity in sharing his knowledge tonight exemplifies everything we stand for." The crowd applauded enthusiastically as Miguel gave a modest nod of acknowledgement. His eyes found Sophia's at the back of the room, and even from a distance, she felt the connection between them strengthening. After the master class, the main gala was in full swing. Champagne flowed, checkbooks opened, and New York's elite mingled in their finery, all waiting for the evening's featured performance. Sophia moved through the crowd with practiced ease, but her mind kept drifting back to the recital hall and the side of Miguel she had seen there. "There you are," Vanessa said, appearing at her elbow with a champagne flute. Everyone's talking about the master class. Was it as amazing as people are saying? Better, Sophia replied honestly. You should have come, Vanessa shrugged. I'm here for the party, not the piano lesson. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. So what's the deal with you and the mysterious pianist? Your dad introduced you like you already knew each other. We've met before, Sophia said vaguely. Through the foundation. Vanessa clearly didn't believe her but was distracted by the arrival of other friends. Across the room, Sophia spotted Miguel speaking with her father and several board members. Even in a crowd of powerful, wealthy people, he stood out. Not because he was trying to, but because of the quiet confidence he radiated. The mask he wore as M.A. Reyes only added to his presence, drawing curious glances from everyone around him. It's almost time for the performance, Richard announced, approaching Sophia. Would you escort Mr. Reyes backstage? I need to make some introductions to our major donors. Of course, she said, ignoring Vanessa's raised eyebrows. As she led Miguel toward the performance area, they found a moment of relative privacy in the bustling crowd. The master class was incredible, Sophia said. You're a natural teacher. Miguel smiled slightly. I enjoyed it. Those kids have so much potential, they just need someone to believe in them. He hesitated. Your father mentioned you might be taking a more active role in the foundation. He did? This was news to Sophia. We haven't discussed it. He seemed to think you were showing more interest lately. Sophia considered this. She had been asking more questions about the foundation's work since discovering Miguel's identity and witnessing his passion for music education. Perhaps her father had noticed the change. I'm thinking about it, she admitted. I've spent 4 years studying business, but I've never really thought about how to use that education for something meaningful. They reached the backstage area, a converted exhibition space now serving as a green room. Miguel paused before entering. Why the sudden interest? He asked. Is it because of the gala? Sophia shook her head. It's because of you, she said honestly. Watching you with those students, I've never seen someone so clearly doing what they were meant to do. Miguel looked surprised behind his mask. I'm just teaching piano. No, Sophia disagreed. You're changing lives. That boy's face when he played that Mozart piece correctly. He'll remember that moment forever. She smiled. Meanwhile, I've been trying to figure out what to do with my life since graduation, and all I've come up with is attending parties and posting photos online. That seems unfair to yourself, Miguel said. You haven't had the chance to find your purpose yet, haven't I? Sophia challenged. Or have I just never looked beyond what was comfortable and expected? Before Miguel could respond, the stage manager approached. 5 minutes, Mr. Reyes. He nodded in acknowledgement, then turned back to Sophia. We should continue this conversation later. I'd like that, she said, and meant it. The main hall fell silent as Miguel took the stage. The grand piano gleamed under the spotlights as he settled onto the bench, adjusting it with the same care Sophia had witnessed in her living room weeks ago. Without introduction, he began to play. The piece was Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, powerful, emotional, and technically demanding. Sophia had listened to recordings of it before, but hearing it live performed by Miguel was an entirely different experience. The music filled the vast space, at times thunderous and commanding, then achingly tender and intimate. Sophia found herself holding her breath during certain passages, completely lost in the performance. She glanced around and saw the same rapt attention on every face in the audience, from the scholarship students who had never attended such an event to the wealthy patrons who had heard the world's finest musicians. Miguel's playing transcended all barriers of class and background, speaking directly to something universal in each person. When the final notes faded, there was a moment of profound silence before the audience erupted in a standing ovation. Miguel stood and took a bow, his composure perfect despite the emotional intensity of what he had just created. As the applause continued, Richard stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we can all agree we've witnessed something extraordinary tonight. More applause. The Blackwell Foundation is proud to announce a new initiative in partnership with Mr. Reyes, a comprehensive music education program that will bring world-class instruction to communities throughout the city. The announcement generated excited murmurs throughout the crowd. This was clearly news to most of the attendees, including many board members. And now, Richard continued, I'd like to invite my daughter, Sophia, to join us. She'll be taking a leadership role in this new initiative, bringing her business acumen and fresh perspective to the foundation's work. Sophia froze in surprise. Her father hadn't mentioned anything about this to her. She felt dozens of eyes turn in her direction, waiting. For a brief, panicked moment, she considered refusing. She wasn't prepared, had no experience, no plan. Then her eyes met Miguel's across the room. Even behind his mask, she could read his expression, a mixture of surprise, curiosity, and something that looked like a challenge. Taking a deep breath, Sophia made her way to the stage, accepting her father's outstretched hand. Thank you, Dad, she said, hoping her voice sounded steadier than it felt. She turned to the audience. The foundation has always been my father's vision, inspired by my mother's love of music. I'm honored to help carry that vision forward, especially in partnership with an artist as gifted as M.A. Reyes. She glanced at Miguel, standing quietly beside her. Music education changed his life, and through him, it's changing the lives of others. I can't think of a more worthwhile investment of my time and our resources than expanding that opportunity to as many young people as possible. The words came naturally, surprising Sophia herself with their sincerity. This wasn't the practiced charm she usually deployed at social events. For perhaps the first time in her adult life, she was speaking from a place of genuine conviction. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and questions. Board members wanted to know more about the initiative. Donors were eager to pledge additional support, and Sophia's friends expressed varying degrees of shock at her new role. Since when do you care about music education? Vanessa asked incredulously during a rare quiet moment. Sophia watched as Miguel, still in his performance attire, spoke earnestly with a group of the scholarship students and their parents across the room. Since I realize there are things more important than my next Instagram post, she replied. Later, as the gala was winding down, Sophia found a moment alone with Miguel on the museum's terrace. The city lights sparkled below them and the autumn air was crisp with possibility. Your father didn't warn you about the announcement, did he? Miguel asked, removing his mask now that they were away from the crowd. Not a word, Sophia admitted. That's how he operates. Decides what needs to happen and makes it so, whether you're ready or not. Are you ready? He asked. Sophia considered the question. 2 months ago, she would have dismissed the idea of working at her father's foundation as boring charity work. Now she found herself genuinely excited by the possibilities. I don't know, she said honestly, but I want to be. Miguel smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. That's the best answer you could give. As they stood together looking out at the city, Sophia realized that in the few short weeks since she'd asked a stranger to play her mother's piano, for fun, both their lives had begun to change in ways neither could have anticipated. And the transformation she sensed was just beginning. 1 year later, sunlight streamed through the tall windows of what had once been an abandoned community center in the Bronx. The building, a sturdy brick structure from the 1950s, had been transformed over the past year. Fresh paint brightened the walls. New floors gleamed underfoot, and most importantly, music filled the air. Sophia stood in the doorway of the main practice room, clipboard in hand, watching as a group of children took their places at keyboards arranged in a semicircle. At the center, Miguel sat at a grand piano, his face animated as he demonstrated a simple melody. Remember, it's not about getting it perfect the first time, he told them. It's about trying again each day and noticing how you improve. A small girl with braids raised her hand. Mr. Miguel, my fingers are too small. They don't reach, Miguel smiled. Mine were too small once too. Let me show you a trick. He moved to her keyboard and gently repositioned her hands, showing her an alternative fingering that made the stretch easier. The girl's face lit up as she successfully played the passage. See? Different hands need different approaches. Music isn't one size fits all, Sophia smiled to herself. In the year since the gala, she had watched Miguel work with hundreds of students and his patience never wavered. Whether teaching basic scales to beginners or advanced theory to teenagers preparing for conservatory auditions, he brought the same genuine enthusiasm to every lesson. The Reyes Music Academy had opened its doors 6 months ago, after intensive renovation and careful program development. What had begun as a vague announcement at the Blackwell Foundation Gala had evolved into a fully fledged nonprofit with 3 locations across the city and plans for more. As the lesson continued, Sophia slipped away to her office, a modest space with large windows overlooking the neighborhood where Miguel had grown up. On her desk sat stacks of grant applications, financial projections, and partnership proposals. Her business degree had proved unexpectedly useful in navigating the complex world of nonprofit management. A knock at her open door made her look up. Elena stood there, smiling warmly. "The new pianos arrived for the West Side location," she reported. "And the contractor says they'll finish the sound. Treatment in the recording studio by Friday." Elena had left her position at the Blackwell household 6 months ago to become the Academy's operations manager, a role that utilized her organizational skills and attention to detail perfectly. The transition had been Richard's idea, along with a significant raise in equity in the nonprofit. "Thanks, Elena," Sophia said. "Any word from Miguel about tonight's fundraiser?" "He'll be there, but he's running late." "The symphony rehearsal is going longer than expected," Sophia nodded. Despite his growing commitment to the Academy, Miguel had maintained his performance career, though he was more selective about which engagements he accepted. The balance between performing and teaching seemed to energize rather than drain him. "And your father called," Elena added. "He wants to stop by before the event to discuss the expansion proposal." "Of course he does," Sophia said with a mixture of exasperation and affection. While Richard had given her significant autonomy with the Academy, he remained deeply invested in its success and future. After Elena left, Sophia returned to the budget spreadsheet on her computer. Numbers that would have bored her to tears a year ago now held her complete attention because they represented real opportunities for the students they served. Each dollar stretched or saved meant another instrument purchased, another teaching position funded, another child given access to music education. The door opened again without a knock. Only one person entered her office that way. "Working through lunch again?" Richard asked, setting a takeout bag on her desk. "I brought your favorite." "Thanks, Dad." Sophia closed her laptop and cleared space for the food. "Elena said you wanted to discuss the expansion." Richard nodded, unpacking containers of Thai food. "I've been thinking about your proposal for the Queens location. The building you identified is perfect, but why stop there? The Bronx Academy is already at capacity with a waiting list. Brooklyn is heading the same way. What if we think bigger?" Sophia picked up her chopsticks. "Bigger how?" "A campus," Richard said, his eyes lighting with the enthusiasm he usually reserved for breakthrough technology. "Not just music, but all the arts. Music, visual arts, dance, theater, everything under one roof with state-of-the-art facilities. We could serve 3 times as many students, and cost 5 times as much," Sophia pointed out pragmatically. "We're still establishing our core programs, Dad. I'm not sure we should expand our scope before we've perfected what we already do well." Richard considered this as he ate. A year ago, he might have pushed harder, used to getting his way in business matters, but his relationship with Sophia had evolved as they worked together. He had learned to respect her judgment even when it differed from his own. "You may be right," he conceded, "but will you at least consider it as a long-term goal? Say 5 years down the road? I'll add it to the strategic plan," Sophia promised. "After we get the Queens location up and running." Richard smiled, satisfied with the compromise. "How's Miguel holding up with the symphony schedule and teaching?" "Busy but thriving," Sophia said. "You know how he is. Most fulfilled when he's overcommitted." Her father gave her a knowing look. "Sounds like someone else I know," Sophia couldn't argue. The past year had been the most demanding of her life, but also unquestionably the most rewarding. The countless hours spent drafting proposals, meeting with community leaders, designing programs, and managing budgets had awakened something in her that her privileged upbringing and formal education had never touched. "By the way," Richard said, changing the subject, "Elena tells me you've been practicing the piano again." Sophia felt herself blush slightly. "Just basics. Miguel's been giving me lessons when we both have time, which is rarely." "Your mother would be pleased," Richard said softly. The mention of her mother created a moment of shared remembrance between them. In many ways, the Academy had brought Sophia closer to her father than she'd been since her mother's death. Their shared commitment to the project had healed old distances neither had acknowledged. After lunch, Sophia walked her father out. As they passed the main practice room, they paused to listen. The children's lesson had ended, and Miguel now sat alone at the piano, playing what sounded like a new composition, something gentle yet complex, with hints of both classical structure and jazz improvisation. "He's writing again," Richard observed. "That's good." Miguel had mentioned months ago that he used to compose but had set it aside as his performance career took off. Sophia felt a warm glow of satisfaction, knowing he had found his way back to creation. The fundraising event that evening was held at a downtown gallery owned by one of the foundation's longtime supporters. Black and white photographs of the academies. Students lined the walls, a project led by a volunteer photography teacher who worked with the older children. Sophia moved through the crowd of donors and arts patrons, discussing the academy's achievements and needs with practiced ease. She no longer needed to fake interest or enthusiasm when talking about the foundation's work. If anything, she had to remind herself not to overwhelm people with too many details about their programs. "You're in your element," a voice said behind her. She turned to find Miguel, dressed in a simple but elegant suit. No mask necessary tonight. The days of performing as the mysterious M.A. Reyes were largely behind him, though he still used the name professionally. "So are you," she replied. "The parents can't stop talking about your new composition program." "It's still experimental," Miguel said modestly, "but the students are responding well." A comfortable silence fell between them, the kind that comes from a year of working closely together, of solving problems, celebrating victories, and occasionally arguing over the best approaches to challenges. "I saw the waiting list numbers," Miguel said. "We're going to need more space soon." Sophia nodded. "Dad wants a performing arts campus eventually. I told him we need to focus on Queens first." "A campus would be amazing," Miguel admitted. "But you're right. One step at a time." They were interrupted by the event coordinator who wanted Miguel to speak to a potential major donor. As he excused himself, Sophia watched him go with a mixture of professional pride and personal affection. Their relationship had evolved, in ways neither could have predicted when she first asked him to play for fun in her living room. They had become partners in the truest sense, challenging each other, supporting each other, and building something meaningful together. Later that night, after the fundraiser ended successfully with several major donations secured, Sophia found herself back at the academy. The building was quiet now, the students long gone. Moonlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the grand piano in the main room. On impulse, she sat down at the keyboard and began to play the simple piece she had been practicing, a Chopin prelude that Miguel had patiently taught her over several months. Her technique was still basic, her tempo inconsistent, but there was feeling in her playing that hadn't been there when she took lessons as a child. "Not bad," Miguel said, appearing in the doorway. "Your left hand is more confident." Sophia jumped slightly, then smiled. "I've been practicing. Not that I'll ever be any good." "That's not the point," Miguel said, sitting beside her on the bench. "The point is that you're trying something difficult and finding joy in the small improvements." He played a few notes, continuing the melody where she had stopped. Sophia joined in, and for a few minutes they played together, her simple part harmonizing with his more complex one. When they finished, Miguel turned to her. "Remember when you asked me to play that day in your penthouse?" Sophia groaned. "Please don't remind me. I was so condescending." "Maybe," Miguel acknowledged with a small smile. "But look what came from that moment." He gestured around them at the academy. Sometimes the worst beginnings lead to the best outcomes. Through the windows, they could see the neighborhood where Miguel had grown up, where Elena had raised him alone while working in other people's homes, where he had first discovered his love for music on an old upright piano at his elementary school. Now, because of their partnership, hundreds of children from similar backgrounds were discovering their own musical voices. Some might become professional musicians like Miguel, but most wouldn't, and that was perfectly fine. The point wasn't to create virtuosos, but to give children tools for expression, discipline, and beauty that would serve them throughout their lives. "We're just getting started," Sophia said, looking out at the city lights. "Imagine what we can build in the next 5 years." Miguel nodded, his expression both satisfied with their progress and eager for the future. "One note at a time," he said. "That's how all great music is made."